Welcome to the Farming on Purpose podcast, a podcast for farmers and ranchers ready to shift for a stronger future. Today's challenges in agriculture are new, but the grit and determination required to be successful are not. On the Farming on Purpose podcast, you'll hear how producers of all sizes and practices are moving mountains for things they believe in, all in the name of an industry that keeps growing and innovating for a stronger food system and stronger farm families. I'm your host, Lexi Wright, and I'm excited to discuss where producers are finding success, challenging the status quo, striving for better, and keeping our heritage alive, all while producing the food we depend on. Hey there, it's Lexi, and I am sliding into this podcast episode with an opportunity for those who are interested in it. The last time that you sat down to plan your marketing, do you know when it was? Was it hard? Were you confused? Did you feel like you actually should be working on your business instead of trying to make social media posts or write emails or design ads? If that's you, I created a system to develop a full year's marketing strategy and a plan to implement it in 8 hours or less. Yes, really, 8 hours, one day. Sit down, plan all of your marketing for the entire year, and actually have the things in place so you can implement it, not just a really pretty outline on a calendar. So you'll walk away with a roadmap for your marketing activities for the next 12 months, confidence in knowing exactly what to do and when to do it, and more time to focus on actually running your business instead of worrying about your marketing. So if you are tired of just winging it or getting stressed out by trying to remember to do your marketing, check out this offer. You can find out when it's ready at farmingonpurpose.com/plan. farmingonpurpose.com/plan. I'd love to see you there. Welcome back to Farming on Purpose. Today I have Heather Nienhueser with me, and Heather is a farm wife and mom from South Central Nebraska. She married her husband after college and has worked in ag banking, and then made the choice to move to stay home with their 3 kids and run 3 businesses from home. They have a direct-to-consumer popcorn business, and then she also does some really cool things on social media, and I'm excited to hear more about all of that too. And then you guys live in an 1890s farmhouse that you are working on projects with. If you can see my background, I also feel that. And then you up helping your dad on the farm. So really excited to have you on the show, Heather, just to share what you guys have going on and your story. So do you want to introduce yourself to us? Tell us how you got where you're at and kind of your ag background and what your farm looks like.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So yeah, as I mentioned, I grew up on a farm helping my dad. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. And so I was kind of like his right-hand man until my brothers were old enough to kind of help. I think I probably left for college when they were old enough to help. But anyway, so I helped him a lot. And I always loved farming and always said I would marry a farmer. Everybody else, or not everybody, but a lot of people are like, I'm not marrying a farmer. I'm getting off the farm and I'm like, please, like a requirement. The top box is that you're a farmer for me to marry you or date you. So so I always wanted to marry a farmer, knew I wanted to be an ag in some form or fashion. My degree in college it started as a major in interior design and then a minor in ag business, which is a very weird combo. But
now I really want to see your house, knowing you have an interior design background.
Well, I didn't get very far in it because then I decided I was like, what I want to do, I can do without a degree. So anyways, I ended up switching my sophomore year to fully being a major in ag business with a banking option. And so then I came back. Well, I met my husband in college and then moved to his hometown and started in banking and was there for about 8 years. And then decided to start staying home when our middle was a year old. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. And so now I help on the farm here and there. Mostly I'm like run the house basically is most of my job, but then during harvest, helping the tractor and that kind of stuff. So I did end up marrying a farmer, and I'm so glad because it's my favorite. I mean, I was open to whoever God had for me, but like really glad it was a farmer.
Yeah, you knew the lifestyle you wanted from an early age. It sounds like. Well, cool. So is your husband's the farm that you came to, is it near where you grew up or how far away?
I'm about 30 minutes from my parents, so not too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Probably ran into each other in Walmart, but never knew it.
Very fortunate that you found your farmer at college and got to have that experience. And then with the kids, that kind of changed your career trajectory. And do you want to talk a little bit about what that was like, making the choice to leave banking and stay home with the kids, and kind of how your role on the farm changed around that?
Yeah. So I actually always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. That was actually like my whole plan. That was also part of why I was like, why am I getting an interior design degree? This isn't even what I want to, like, I don't want to be away from my family all the time. I mean, at this point, I didn't even know my husband, but I just knew like what I wanted to do. And so I always wanted to do that. But then, you like are an adult and you realize like you need things like insurance and, things like that. And so, I loved my job too. I loved working with it was primarily an ag bank. So I worked with a lot of farmers. I was on the loan side of things. And so I really loved my job. I loved my coworkers. I'm a very extroverted person. So I loved being with people and all that stuff. But I just knew that I would never regret having this time with my kids. And so, I actually grew like a network marketing business on the side of my banking, and my husband was finally like, okay, like we can do this. We ended up doing like a Christian healthcare ministry sharing insurance. That was like our biggest thing, was like, he's like, the money side, we're okay for you to quit. But like, he was so nervous about the insurance. So then we, talked to other people who had done that and kind of figured that out. And then he was finally like, okay, we're good. And now he would say, he's like, I wish I would have told you you could do it like a year sooner or 2 years sooner. Cause he loves having me around more. And I was just much less stressed as a person and a wife and a mom. And so, yeah, it was hard though. Like I bawled when I told my boss that I was going to start staying home. Like I could not say the words, I'm quitting. I literally could not. And my sister-in-law was like, just tell him that you've decided to stay home. And I was like, okay, I can say that. Like it was like a solid week of me being like, I need to go in his office. I need to go in his office, because I loved my job. I really, really did. So it was hard. And then once I got home, I felt like it felt really good, but I also felt a little bit like, okay, now what? Like so much of your identity is wrapped up in what you do for a living. And so it was kind of hard, and I didn't have like the social aspect of it. And so, I think that's when I kind of really like leaned into social media, because, you need somebody to talk to. Not that you're truly talking to anybody, but you're having conversations and things like that. And so a lot of that just kind of naturally happened because of that. So,
yeah. Well, I heard a lot of like my own feelings that I had when I left my job come out in that story. I feel like that's a pretty universal experience for folks who make that choice and take that step. It's hard, especially when you like your job. It's really hard, but it's also really rewarding to take the step too.
Yeah.
So you guys went the Christian healthcare ministries route. What's that been like? I know that's something that a lot of folks look into, but they don't really know like where to go to find answers or how to even take that step, just because it's off the mainstream. So what was your guys' experience with that?
So we had a couple different friends who had used it before. So I was able to ask her question or who they still use it. So I was one in particular I'm really close with. And so I was able to ask her a lot of questions, especially knowing we wanted to have more kids. I was like, how does that work maternity wise, and prenatal care and all that stuff. And it's been great. Like they've covered so much, like prenatal, any of that. I think I wouldn't say most, but a lot of farmers are in the unique position where, like we can pay up front and then I turn in the bill. Or I mean, you can turn it on to like monthly payments with the hospital. Like sometimes they're like, it might take a little bit to get this money back to you, a couple months. So like if you want to just turn on payments with them and then turn the bill in. But anyways, basically you either pay it up front or you put it on monthly payments and then you turn that bill into Christian Healthcare Ministries and then they reimburse you. There's like a portion that you're responsible for, but then they reimburse you for the rest. And so it was really seamless with when we had our kids. We don't go to the doctor a lot. And so I don't feel like I'm as well versed in like if you're doing like regular doctor visits or things like that. But I feel like it's more of like if major things happen, we have a baby or things like that, it's really good at covering that. And like I said, it probably does a really good job on doctor's visits. We just don't do those very often. Yeah. So, yeah, but like even my son had like myofunctional therapy, basically tongue therapy is what I call it. And they even covered that. And like the people there were like, usually insurance companies don't even cover this. So, yeah, we've been really happy with it and it's been a good transition. So, yeah.
Well, that's really good to hear. And really good to know you have that safety net. I'm sure that's really reassuring as you left your job to take that step. Well, the other thing you said that stuck out to me in that story is like how much of our identities are wrapped up in what we do every day. What was that like making the transition? I'm sure tweaking your routines and your habits to take on kind of a different day to day.
Yes. Yeah. So by nature, I like thrive in productivity, like being able to check things off a to-do list. And, I think a lot of people probably are like that, or a lot of women for sure are probably like that. And so like when I came home, it was like, okay, I'm accomplishing nothing. I mean, obviously that's not true, but in the moments you're like, wow, like what am I even doing? I'm not doing anything all day because you're just reloading the dishwasher or picking up the same thing you picked up 5 times. And so a couple things that it's been, how long have I been home now? 7 years. So I'm not saying this was like immediate, but in the last probably 3 or 4 years, I've kind of come up with a routine where like on Sunday nights, I kind of look at my week, look at what we've got going. And it's a lot different too now. Excuse me. I should say it's different too now. Like my youngest is 5. And so I feel like we don't have like little kids anymore because when I had littles, my calendar would have nothing on it. But like now we have, things going on, sports and things like that. But anyways, I sit down on Sunday nights. I look at my calendar. I plan out our meals. Because if I don't plan out our meals, then we're eating spaghetti 5 nights a week. And then I also like write down literally everything I want to get done that week. And then either the night before or the morning of, literally I have it right here. I was doing that before we got on here. I make a sticky note and I pull off of that list, like things that need to get done. And so I kind of have like a one thing I do around my house a day, and it just helps me feel like I'm accomplishing something, but not feeling like, because like if I look at my whole house and gosh, I can't clean this whole thing. But like if I can break it down into little steps, then it just helps. So just like things like that, where like it made me feel a little bit more accomplished throughout the day, even though, it would be stuff I would be doing anyways, even if I worked. But yeah. And I actually too, this is kind of random, but my sister-in-law and I set up like kind of like a little accountability thing where we like text each other in the morning, we're like, these are the things we're going to get done. And then we text each other throughout the day. Like, I got this done. And then it's kind of more fun because then you feel like the office atmosphere was fun for me because like I could talk to people and we could chat about things. And so I know not everybody has that. And I couldn't even tell you how that came about because I don't know. I couldn't tell you how that happened, but we just started doing it and we're like, okay, this is fun. And we do it with like decluttering and send each other like before and after pictures. And yeah, so I don't know. If you have a friend like that, I would encourage you to try doing something like that because it's been really fun for us. We've been doing it for almost a year now. So
that sounds really cool. I love that, like the accountability and just the social aspect of it, because that's something that I find. I'm not an extrovert. I'm naturally an introvert. And so I kind of find myself like I just crawl in my hole in the house and I don't leave. But that's not really good for me. Like I don't make those relationships, but that's an easy way to kind of foster some of those as you're just going about your day and make sure that you maintain that social piece. So I love that. And then the kind of just the mental like check mark or piece of crossing it off your list to know that you're accomplishing things is really cool. I think it's like a neuroscience thing, right? Like it's I don't know what that's called, but if you were whether believe it. Yeah, it works, right?
right.
Well, that's really cool. I think that as our like a big thing like that, like changing your work life, it can cause such big changes in our identity when we're doing things at home and trying to figure out like how I contribute and how that all fits together. It's hard to sometimes piece that together when you go through changes like that. So I'm curious, you mentioned stuff around the house and like the kids' activities. How does the business stuff fit in? Because you are also busy with that too, right?
Yes. I can't say I probably do it all that like balanced or whatever people say. And it's kind of shifted throughout the, years, when my kids were still napping, like a lot of my like business and work stuff was done while they're napping. Or after they've gone to bed at night, I did a lot then. And so now that they're older and not napping, like, well, my youngest is now in preschool. So next year will be a totally different thing where they're all in school and it'll be so strange to me. But so like I've tried to do a lot of my work now while she's at preschool and the boys are at school. And it's I kind of just like I don't have a schedule or a routine. I'd love to tell you I do, but I don't.
Yeah.
It's more like that's where like my list of things comes in really handy because if I don't put it on there, like it's like out of sight, out of mind. And so I try to make sure like I at least have the things that need to absolutely get done, this week or this month need to be on that list. Because if they're not going to get done. And sometimes they still don't get done, but at least they're on the list and I don't forget about them.
Does your business accept online payments, credit cards, or bank transfers? You're going to want to know about a tool called Thrivecart. I've been using this tool on my own website and on clients' websites for years and have been so happy with it. Thrivecart is a software tool you can use to design online checkouts with every option you can dream up. You can sell physical and digital products, connect to loads of other softwares you use for your website, accept payments, email marketing, and more. This is the most powerful tool that I use and the lowest cost one for my business. I recommend it for anyone who accepts online payments, who wants to increase their revenue or average order value on any type of product that you sell. In my show notes, you can find an affiliate link that I have for Thrivecart that gets you a great deal on a one-time payment, no subscription, and also allows me to earn affiliate income from this tool that I really enjoy and recommend. If you have any questions about how Thrivecart could work for your business, feel free to shoot me an email and I'd be happy to chat with you about it. Now, back to the show. So with the farm stuff, that your husband is a farmer, do you find there's any like seasonal things for you guys that you use to kind of make it feel like everything doesn't revolve around farming schedule and the weather? I know like a sense of control or maybe even like a false sense of control can sometimes help a lot. What do you guys do seasonally to manage that?
I think because I grew up in ag and my mom did not grow up in ag. And so like, I think it was a big culture shock for her when she married a farmer and how that works. And, she did a lot of like going on trips by herself, taking us, to see her sister or whatever. And I just remember like missing my dad then. And so I think I have a different perspective in like, and maybe also too, my husband has a pretty good balance of it too. Like he's really good at in not busy seasons being home, between 5 and 6 at night. And I know that's, not a luxury everybody has. But that's something that he's made a priority, obviously during harvest planting. Right now during fall work, he's not. But like during the summer, he tries to be home between 5 and 6 so we can eat supper. And then if he has irrigating, we usually go with him. Or growing up in ag, I just like in my mind a little bit like my life does revolve around farming, but I also think we have good boundaries where I'm not resentful of that. Okay, so I feel like in the not busy seasons, we've set pretty good, just like habits. Like I said, he's home between 5 and 6 usually, so we can eat supper. And then like winter is usually our big family time. I despise winter, actually. I don't like being cold. I don't like it dark. But I do love that he's home more. So it's like that, like, yeah, 2 wolves on each side of you or whatever that is, where you're like, I really like this, but I don't. Yeah. And so usually like if we're going to do like a vacation or something like that, which I mean, we don't, it's usually all within driving distance, but like we usually, do it during the winter time. And so that kind of breaks it up. And then also too, I've just kind of created communities between my network marketing business and social media. And then also like Kylie Epperson's Farm Wives event. Like I always try to do at least one thing a year where I go and my husband's like, we need to, go together. And I'm like, you're welcome to come. But always like during times where he can't, and that's okay. But, so yeah, I think for me too, it's really important for me to get away and go do something for a couple days. And then I just come back really refreshed. And, I just feel like then I like appreciate too being home more.
Yeah. Yeah.
like claustrophobic.
Yeah. Well, that's nice you guys have that balance seasonally. The fact that you grew up on a farm and so you kind of already had that appreciation for how farm life routine works is interesting because I think there's a lot of women, like you said, your mom, who it is a culture shock for if they come not from a farm, or even if they do come from a farm and they just wish that there were more priority on other things sometimes. Mm-hmm. How did you, or I guess what kind of advice do you have to women who are experiencing that, where they want to love the farm life, but there's just things that set them off or really frustrate them about it?
Yeah. First I would say there's seasons that are harder than others. Right now we have a 5, 8, and 10-year-old. And so it's easy for us to all load up in the tractor, all load up and go irrigating or things like that. It's much easier than when we had babies or things like that. And so I encourage moms, especially like young moms, new moms, people with really little kids, like it's hard. Like I'm not going to negate that it's not hard, especially in those like long days where you're like, I just want my husband home so he can hold the baby for like 30 minutes so I can go shower, or, it's hard. And it's hard to pack everybody up and go to the tractor or the combine or whatever. But I think one of my biggest pieces is to just, I'm speaking busy seasons right now, but like get out of the house. A lot of times for me, that looks like going to the field because that's my happy place. Like my happy place is in the tractor and the combine. And so if that's not necessarily like bringing you an insane amount of joy, maybe pick somewhere else. Maybe, I don't know, go to the library or the coffee shop or it depends on obviously what you have in your town, but like go do something like once a day, like even like a grocery store trip, even if it's pure chaos with your children. Like it just can refresh you enough. I can just tell when I don't get out of the house every day, it's not good for my like mental health by any means. And so I like to, somebody asked me one time, they're like, do you truly like taking somebody not an ag? They're like, do you really like taking your husband lunch every day? Like, you can't tell me you actually like doing that. And I was like, actually, I love it. Like, and not for the fact of like, I need to be bringing him lunch, but because I get to see him. Like, I miss him. Like we all do. We all miss our spouse during the day. And so like, I miss him. And if I don't get to see him for lunch, he's actually been like working at a field, like doing some custom stuff, like over an hour away right now. And so like, I haven't got to see him for lunch the last couple of days. And I'm like, I really don't like this. And so, I really like to go and be with him. And so, and like I said, I know that's not everybody's favorite thing to do, but like, that's something that I've even told like my sister-in-law who came into this with a different sister-in-law than the one that I was texting. But anyways, she came into this with no ag background whatsoever and married my brother. And so he's obviously farming with my dad. And for a long time, she didn't understand it. And I didn't blame her at all. Because it is just a totally different life. And then this year, she got into like making meals for the field and like doing all this stuff. And she's like, I just feel like it's so small of a thing. And I was like, no, like as somebody who now drives a tractor and doesn't have a meal, it is such a huge deal. Like, I guess that kind of got off on a tangent, but my biggest piece of advice is to just like go be with them. Some of it's going to be farming related. A lot of it's going to be farming related. And so go be with them and kind of ask questions and kind of get involved and you'll feel a lot better about it. And probably enjoy it a lot more. And if there's days where like, I just cannot go to the field, go to the library or something like that, because yeah, that's been a game changer for me. It's just getting out of the house. So
yeah. I think that being involved with the farm makes a huge difference too. Like even if like you said, if it's just going and helping in the evenings or taking lunch or just dropping by for a visit, like just getting out there and seeing what they're doing and then even providing a little bit of support for me, it makes me feel like more involved. Like I know my purpose isn't as big as theirs and the things that they're doing that are important, but having that little bit of contribution makes it feel different than it does when you're just at the house waiting for things to, for your husband to come home. Well, thank you for sharing that advice. I think that's great advice. I want to talk more about some of the things that you are doing then on the side of the business to sell some of the product. So do you want to talk about how that got started and what you do?
yeah. So kind of our main like thing that we do right now is direct to consumer popcorn. And it kind of all started in 2020. I grew popcorn in our garden because I was like, okay, fresh popcorn is where it's at. My dad always grew it every couple of years. And we're big popcorn people. And so I was like, I'm going to grow some in the garden. And at that point, I was just kind of starting. Well, no, that was in 2021 that I really started sharing on social media. But anyways, so I was growing this popcorn and I did have some followers that like didn't know me in real life, but not a lot. But anyways, people were like, oh my gosh, I want to buy some. And so my husband and I were talking back and forth, like, maybe we should do something with this. And then in 2022, we're like, okay, we're just going to grow like 6 rows along our driveway, which we have a really long driveway. So I don't know how much it ends up being, but anyways, we grew 6 rows and we're like, this can be like a fun thing for our kids to do with us and kind of learn like what it takes to run a business and make some money. You know, like this can be this, we obviously like give them the money. Like we don't keep really any of it outside of supplies. And so, we started with 6 rows along our driveway, and then we ended up with like 200 bags of popcorn, and we sold out in 10 days. And we're like, okay. The bad thing was it was a learning experience because like half the bags broke in shipping, and
No.
it was like a whole deal. Like, and people were like, we didn't want to tell you. I'm like, no, I need to know these things because then I can't use those next year. And so I was really thankful. People were like, it's not a big deal, but it did break. I was like, okay, thanks for telling me. So anyways, then the next year, my husband decided to, and the other piece of that is we handpicked those 6 rows during harvest. And I told my husband, I was like, we can't do this. It's too hard with you working, you know, sun up to sundown, me being the one that has to be out there with the kids picking popcorn. Like it just was not going well. And so the other piece is we do always take Sundays off. And so he would help on like Sundays. We'd go out there and work on it too. But it was just like a lot of work. And so I said, we have to do the combine next year. Like I can't. Yeah, I love the idea of handpicking this, but I cannot if we're going to scale this whatsoever. And so then the next year he grew about 2 acres, still just right by our driveway, and was able to use the combine. And we found jars and all that kind of stuff. And my oldest, he's not obviously on social media or anything like that, but this year he's like, I really want to do some of the reels. And so he does like the videoing for it and the the text on it. He makes the whole reel and does all that stuff. So he's kind of our marketing person now. And so, yeah, it's like a family affair where we all go and package and clean and do all that stuff, popcorn. So, yeah.
That's so fun. Well, and it's so cool that it grew from just your garden to a several acre patch. Is that something that you guys are just excited to continue doing with the kids, or what are the future of the popcorn business look like?
Well, at this point, I think so right now, since it's just like a cottage, we just have a cottage food license. We have to be the ones that sell. Obviously, yeah, we can ship it. But my husband's like, we need to look into like, so we can get it in our grocery store, or like a couple local boutiques are like, we'd love to have it. And I'm like, sorry, you can't yet. So I think eventually we would, like to get it to the point where we can wholesale it. But at this point, we're just running with what we got. But yeah, my husband's like researching how do we get it on Amazon. And so, you know, we're kind of like dreamer people. And so we know like, what's the next thing we can do with this? I keep telling my kids, like your FFA project, you can use this for that kind of thing. But yeah, so which I have a neighbor growing up who turned his FFA project into like a huge business. It's in stores all across the United States now. And so I'm like, it could happen. But yeah, at this point, I think we're just trying to get to the point where we sell all of our inventory, and then, you know, like whether that means we grow more or not, I don't know. So yeah, it's we kind of just take it year by year.
Yeah. Well, cool. It keeps it fun that way. And you could always think about, you know, what else might be possible there. Fun. And who knows, maybe one of your kids will have like a brilliant idea to market it all. Sounds like you got one that's interested in doing that. So
yeah. Yes.
Oh, well, that's really neat. Where can people find it if they want to go check it out?
Our website is www.farm-kid.com.
All right, perfect. We'll put that in the show notes.
Nationwide. And yeah, we have jars, we have bags, and I'm working on, hopefully today it'll be able to launch, but we're doing something fun just for the holidays, called a movie night holiday box, and it's going to have popcorn and M&Ms. And we're doing pre-orders on that, and then we will ship it like December. I think we're doing like December 12th. We'll ship them all out that day so they can get to people Christmas and stuff. So yeah.
And then we feel like a fun Christmas Eve tradition to
Yes.
farm kid popcorn and M&Ms.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, being on a family farm, there's a lot of other things that you guys have had to go through, I'm sure, with, it sounds like your brother back on your family farm and then your husband on you guys' family farm now. What are some of the things that stick out to you as either like rewarding or challenges that you've overcome in keeping the family farms going? Because we all know it's getting harder and harder to do and harder to make it work generation to generation.
Yes. So my husband farms with his brother, which I also think is kind of a huge blessing for us. It's like my dad just farmed by himself, and he is a first generation farmer. So it wasn't like his dad was farming with him or anything like that either. And so I do think also that plays a key role in the fact of the boundaries we are able to have, because there's somebody else here working with us that can pick up the slack if we need to leave or things like that. But he farms with his brother. And when he originally came back to farm, there wasn't really room for him to farm to make it work. And pay him and all that stuff. And so that's when they added on the kind of like an extra trucking business. And we do a little bit of commercial trucking. And so it's just kind of shifted throughout the years, because that was 14 years ago when he came back, and his brother wasn't farming with them at that point. And so he did trucking for a while. That was his main thing. And then obviously did farming with his dad as well. And then these last couple of years, they've also added on like custom spraying. And so it's just kind of where they've seen kind of needs. They've been like, okay, like we could really use a sprayer. And like they had people asking them to spray. And so, they kind of just like jumped on opportunities like that where it's still ag related, and it's still farming, and it's still stuff that will be like the trucks, being able to truck their own corn, huge, being able to spray their own acres with that. But then also being able to use that as this extra source of income to the farm has been really huge. Or like right now they're custom spreading manure. And so I think that's been something that they're just like always open to those kind of opportunities of like, okay, yeah, like I could go and do that kind of a thing.
Hey guys, it's Lexi here with a bonus for you on this episode. I wanted to briefly share with you something that I have been collaborating on with thetinylife.com. In the past, on some episodes, I've shared about what our process was like for finding land and trying to expand our farm and all of the obstacles that we faced in doing that. And I know this is a very common struggle for beginning farmers, for expanding farmers, and for people who maybe are already on a farm and just looking to diversify it or add something that's their own little piece separate from their family. So we all have this obstacle that is out there. And this resource that we've been collaborating on has put together a great guide to finding different avenues to find land. There are lots of different ideas in there that you can pursue no matter how long you've been in this search. I think you'll find something new in this guide. Thetinylife.com is a website that is focused on minimalism and finding ways to simplify your life, which I just find really enjoyable because it's something I think we can all take something from and learn a lot. They also have a great resources that you can check out about homesteading and finding really cool tutorials there too, especially if you're into gardening or think you might want to think about how you want to lay out your property. They have great guides and resources and content for you there that you can check out. So to access that free download for ideas and a guide to finding land, you can find that at thetinylife.com/FOP for farming on purpose. thetinylife.com/FOP. Go check it out.
Well, that's really neat that you guys have been able to add on like the custom services, because I feel like it's just crazy smart to do that. Like everybody knows that the equipment is one of the biggest investments that you have to make in farming. If you're going to buy it, being able to use it for other things than just yourself and help your neighbors out is really cool too. And a good way to also be just a little bit more stable, other than just relying on the price of corn or, whatever that year. You have other things to supplement. So that's neat. You guys have been able to use that to make a place for people on the farm. Now you said his brother wasn't back when he came back. How did that transition go of adding another person to the farm?
It was tricky. I'm not gonna lie. It was like that first year we're like, oh gosh, I don't know how this is gonna go. Because he, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but he and his brother are just not necessarily the same people. Even though they grew up together and all that stuff, but like it was just like, oh goodness, like how is this gonna go? But it's actually been really, really smooth. And it's been nice that, like I said, they can really rely on each other to, if he's gone, my husband does all the chores, or if we're gone, he can do all the chores. Like usually, yeah, it's much easier, much more efficient to do them together. But if one or the other needs to be gone, like they can kind of pick up that slack. And so, yeah, I think communication was kind of like the biggest hurdle they had to kind of work through. And I wouldn't say that they're all that great at it still, but they're working. They make it work. There was many times like, my husband would just come home and be like, I just had to get out of there for a minute. And I was like, that's fine. Do what you need to do. And so, yeah, and they've kind of split it now where they still farm obviously together and do everything together. But my husband kind of runs the crop side of things and makes a lot of those decisions. Ultimately, I mean, obviously they discuss it together, but ultimately he ends up making a lot of the phone calls and the decisions and things like that on the crop side. And his brother does a lot of the cattle. And so I think that also helps too, where they kind of each have their own piece that they have a little bit of control. It's funny because whenever we butcher, and we have a couple friends that come, really good friends, they're like, there's a lot of chiefs in here and not enough Indians. So like, that is the epitome of their days. There's a lot. So it will always be a little tricky, but yeah.
Now you said when you butcher, what do you guys butcher?
We just like butcher hogs for ourselves.
Okay.
Like we didn't this year. We kind of we're doing like every other year now, but we'll just butcher like, depending like how many people are going to be there, but usually around 10 hogs, and butcher those just for our families and his siblings and parents and all that stuff. So yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah. It's an experience for sure.
Having your husband and his brother working side by side on the farm, that was a family farm before. So transitioning that to your generation, I'm sure had some steps that maybe you got to see some of. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And then maybe if you guys have thought at all yet about what the next transition might look like, and if you think if you started planning for that at all yet.
Yeah. So in, let's see, 2019, my father-in-law was diagnosed with cancer. And they actually gave him like 6 to 9 months to live. And so he immediately, when he got that diagnosis, started setting up the transition. Because he was like, because they had no plan prior to that, no plan. And so he immediately set it up, and, we all bought into the corporation and whatever, kind of goes along with that, and the ground and all that stuff. Basically, his goal was to have my mother-in-law set up that she wouldn't have to worry about anything. It would just kind of do its thing. And he does have two other siblings who are not in ag. And so they also have pieces of it that they kind of run. So they have an outside perspective. But he worked with the attorney and the accountant. That's what I'm looking for, to kind of work on setting all of that up. And they had that all worked out by the end of that year. And we actually ended up getting to have him around till 2022. So we got a lot longer with him than we initially thought we would, which was amazing. And so it was actually an extremely seamless transition. My husband actually talks to my dad a lot about this because he has no transition plan to my brother. And he's like, it was so much better just having it set up already and kind of everybody knowing the game plan. And because we got him for a couple more years with us, like he actually got to be there to see it play out because we went ahead and just did that transition right away. We didn't wait until he was gone or anything like that. And so it was really, really seamless. And looking forward to what we're going to do. I honestly don't know what we're going to do. I think it starts getting really messy when you have two brothers who have kids and like, you know, how are they going to come back and farm? Maybe nobody will on one of them and one of them. I don't know. I don't know how we're going to do that yet. It is something we talk about a lot. We have a really messy situation from my husband's grandpa to his dad. And we're actually like, I'm not going to go into that because we're still fighting it in court. And so from that perspective, we have to have it set up before. We have been at this for, I think, almost 3 years in court, and it is messy a lot of people's feelings get hurt and families like get broken up. And whenever there's ground involved, like it always makes it worse. And so, I don't know. I think we've been blessed to see both ends of the spectrum in that, like one that was not set up well and one that was, and how much different and how much peace. And like, it didn't add another layer onto him passing away. Of grief and all this stuff. Like they could just keep going, and grieve personally, but not have to grieve in the business aspect of it, besides him not being there anymore, obviously. But yeah, so I don't know. That is something we've talked about a lot though, is like things we've learned from both situations of how we want to do it in the future. I can't say we've like come up with any concrete things, but we have like we've had a lot of conversations about it. Because I think, I mean, you never know, but I think at least one of our kids will come back. And I don't know about his brother, but like I said, I think it gets a little bit messier when you have like cousins that are then possibly be farming together. And I hope that's something they can keep doing. But we'll just kind of just how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's something that's going to be a lot more common as we go, because we have seen the size of operations grow to where it takes multiple family members. And then you have the kids from multiple families coming back. So I think it's going to become a lot more common, but it is going to be interesting to see how it works differently for everybody. Yeah. You have really unique perspective that you have personally seen, like really kind of both ends of the spectrum, it sounds like, for these farm transitions. If you could give anybody, like there's a million different ways to do a transition, but if you could give somebody a tip of like, if you do anything, do this, or if you do anything, don't do this, what would you say?
One thing I would say from the not good side of it is when you're make sure it's not like make sure the attorney is writing the entire thing. We're getting in trouble here because they used a template. The attorney that set it up used a template. And so there's some wording that can go either way. And so, we never in a million years expected this. My husband never in a million years expected this to be an issue. because it was sort of set up, ready to go, but some of the wording in it is conflicting. And so I just would say, make sure when you're setting it up, your attorney really goes over like every loophole that could possibly be in there, so that things in that way don't get messed up. But also on the flip side of that, the piece that, I feel like really went well for us was they had lots of conversations about it, and everybody was included, and everybody that, my husband and his brother and his dad, they all had a lot of conversations about that, and they were all part of that conversation. And I think that's really important for the transparency of the actual, like, everybody already knows what's going to happen when this transition takes place versus it being a surprise to anybody. Because I think that's when they expect one thing and then it ends up being something different. I think that's when people really get like, wait a second, that's not how it was supposed to be or whatever. And so, yeah.
It's a hard position to be in because I think a lot of folks know that somebody is going to feel like they got the short end. So that's why nobody wants to talk about it before they're gone. So like, well, I don't want to make them mad at me before I go. It's like, I'd rather be gone and then you guys can sort it out. But it makes it really hard to process that. Like, that person is gone. You don't even have the opportunity to, make amends or talk about it.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you guys had the opportunity to do the transition and then still have your father-in-law around to just spend time with and let him see that it was successful. That's really, really cool that you got to do that.
Yes.
That frustrates me on what you mentioned, like the attorney and the template, like as somebody who like we need to put some things in place for ourselves. They tell you to go to an attorney to make sure it's done right. They went to an attorney and it still didn't happen right. That's pretty challenging to get through.
Yeah, And I can't say because we really liked that attorney too. Like, we personally used him too. Not even like something against him. It was just the way it was worded. There was a loophole in it. And so now we're in this big fight. And so, yeah, I don't know. I know that's not comforting to tell anybody. Yeah. But yeah, maybe they need to look at it like, okay, if I was fighting against this, what could I use?
Yeah. Or get another perspective, which nobody wants to have to pay another hourly fee for an attorney, but worth it, I guess, if it helps definitely your support. Yeah. Yep. Well, you've shared a great wealth of information. I appreciate you just kind of sharing what's worked for your family in enjoying farm life, and then your expansion in the popcorn business, and then kind of how the farm transition has worked for you guys. I do want to ask if there is anything that like you have really enjoyed sharing about on social media, because you've had, I think, a great time. It seems like from looking at your social media, like developing that story and that message that you put out. What are some of the things that you enjoy talking most about there?
I feel like it's shifted a little bit over the years as I've done it. But I just really love sharing about farming, and relating to other farm wives and talking with them. And like I've said, and like we've talked about a little bit before this, but just like helping them truly find joy and loving being a farm wife, because it can be really amazing. And my heart breaks for people who don't love it. And like, yeah, it's just like one of my big goals is to help them love it. I also, we touched on a little bit, like doing stuff to my house. That's something that like brings me so much joy. And so I've been kind of adding more of that to what I share on social media, because I did share like fashion and outfits, but 99% of the time, like I'm in leggings and a sweatshirt or shorts and a t-shirt. And so it was like, I had to like plan it more. And so it feels a lot more like me to be sharing more on like house projects and stuff. And so I've kind of transitioned to sharing more of that because it's a lot of fun for me. And it brings me a lot of joy. And I know that I'm not the only one that's living in like an old house on the farm that your husband brought you to. And really want to love your house, but like there's so many things that annoy you. And so, yeah, I just kind of told my husband, I'm like, I'm doing I'm taking $100 budget and I'm going to make this place somewhere I want to be.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes just that $100 at a time.
Yes. I mean, that's all I have time to do anyways in the month. So let's be real.
Yeah. Well, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, definitely everyone go check out Heather's social media. We'll link it in the show notes for you. If you're looking to find joy or maybe a different perspective on how to enjoy farm wife life. Thank you so much for sharing your story and being on the show today, Heather. Where can folks follow up with you at to learn more?
So my Instagram is just my name at Heather Nienhueser.com. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes because no one's going to be able to spell that. But yeah, on Instagram, you can find me there. Or like I said, our popcorn website. I do also have a blog that's just heathernienhueser.com. That's kind of newer. So there's not a lot on there, but you can go check that out too. So
fun. Yes, check out the popcorn holiday special and check out Heather's social media. Well, thanks so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
If you've enjoyed spending time with us today, please take a moment to review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or join the conversation on social media. Do you have a topic you would like to discuss or know someone with a story to share? Apply to be a guest on the podcast at farmingonpurpose.com. You can follow the host of Farming on Purpose, Lexi, on your favorite social media platforms for more content by searching for Farming on Purpose. And remember, if you look around your table and aren't inspired by the people there, it's time to find a new seat.